I remember hearing about the Pearl Harbor attack on the radio when I was 16 years old. I was going to high school, and it was on a Sunday, and there was nothing eventful for me doing on Sundays in those days, so I do recall the discussion on it. I do recall the newspaper articles that appeared on the attack on Pearl Harbor. And at that specific time, I knew little about it because we really did not get engaged immediately. When I was first drafted into the Navy, I was assigned to because I had been a graduate of an aeronautical school, I was assigned to the Naval Air Transport Service. And then I decided that I did not like the job, and I moved on to going to boot camp. They did send me to boot camp after that. And from there I went to a fire control school. So I was at that point a seaman and what's known as a fire control striker. And I was assigned aboard the Battleship Arkansas, and my job was to take information from the CIC and from the Marines ashore as to where we should fire our projectiles and pass them on to the executive officer so that he would be knowledgeable as to what our requirements were. Before we got to Iwo Jima, there was a discussion, and they had us in on the discussion as to the island, and they had a panorama of the island, and they were describing how we were going to attack the island. And the Mount Siravaki was on the south side of the island, and then on the north of Mount Siravaki, there was two beaches on both sides of the island, one on the east side and one on the west side. And the plan was to make a non-landing on the west side of the island. We set up troops and all the equipment there on the west side, and then we did that first, and then once we drew the Japanese to that side of the island, the actual attack was done on the east side. So this was the plan. At one point, we did have a projectile land about 200 yards in front of us, and then we figured, well, they were going to fire another one. And usually what they do, what is normal practice in that kind of fire, is you fire first shot and then you'll see if it lands in front of the target, then you move your elevation up 200. That's the way it's normally done. And they fired the second shot, and that wound up 200 yards beyond our ship. And then we fired a main battery salvage at them, and we took the gun emplacement out. I looked up, and there they were putting the flag up. And this was the first flag because ultimately a reporter decided that they were going to put up a bigger flag. In fact, the executive officer, the guy in command of the Marines, said they ought to put up a bigger flag. And they decided to put up a bigger flag, and that one, when that was put up, that one was picture. They took pictures, and that appeared in a magazine, and that's the one that you see is the symbol of World War II. The first flag was nothing unusual because when we were in charge, when we started on an island, and once we got control of that island, we then put up an American flag. So this was just another flag on another island at that point. And it didn't become significant until after they put up the big flag, and that was staged. We were with a battle group, and of course we had an admiral in charge of the group, and all of these ships and small craft, the landing craft, they were all attached to that battle group. And we moved on to Okinawa with that battle group. The Japanese had now resulted to suicide bombers, and they would send their pilots out with the point of suicide, and they would fly these kamikaze planes into ships. And we had a couple of them come in on us, and we were able to down them before they even got near us. I did get on to the island. I didn't at Iwo Jima, but I was on the island of Okinawa. And things had, by the time we got there, things had quieted down a bit. After that, we went into repair, and then we moved on to Leyte Gulf in the Philippines, and many ships went into Leyte Gulf, and there was an assembly of thousands of ships and landing craft and ships, etc. And they were there, and the purpose of that was the assembly to land on the mainland of Japan. And then while we were there, they dropped the second atom bomb. And when they dropped that second atom bomb on Hiroshima, the Japanese felt that the next bomb would probably be on Tokyo, so they decided to surrender. It's funny. We were. It was virtually quiet, and we were showing movies. And this is when we were in Leyte Gulf in the Philippines. We were showing movies at that time, and they had the movie aboard. And some of them were newsreels, some were movies, and then they had these newsreels. And one of the newsreels did picture MacArthur in a little bit of water going onto the Philippine Islands. Well, it's hard to believe, but would you believe every sailor on that ship booed him? and the Navy officers never said a word. What happened to that then is we began to assemble everything together, and a lot of the equipment that we had aboard, that a lot of it was thrown overboard because we took aboard on the battleship that I was on, we took aboard a number of soldiers to take them back to the States because there was no other transportation available at that time. They had transported them out there on transport ships in different stages, and now they wanted to get them back home, and they put them on any kind of ship that they could put them on to take them back home. Oh, I don't know. I just liked the Navy, and I decided that maybe I would go on to submarines because I had a fascination with submarines.